welcome to the Mental Health Takeaways podcast. We are a male mental health podcast, which is really aiming to engage more men in conversations around mental health by having the types of conversations that we think men are interested in anyway. We have a guest today in today's show, a guy called Dan Reid, who set up the phenomenal Men Walking and Talking, which you'll be able to find their Instagram link in our show notes to find out more about them. Brad, any thoughts on the episode the listeners are about to hear?
Again, as always, probably a bit biased, aren't I? But I thought it was a great episode. I really enjoyed hearing about Dan's journey in terms of what made him set up Men Walking and Talking. I found that really interesting. But yeah, there's loads of good insights. So I think it's a really nice episode once again.
That whole idea that, I don't want to give away too many spoilers for what's about to come up, but that there are over 400 men engaged in in the groups that he set up, really, because they were something that he needed and it met his need, but actually he's realised there were 400 other men. Sorry, not 400 other men. There are 400 other men every week that have the same needs that he had back in 2020 when he first set all this up. So I would think there'll be lots of men listening to this that have those same needs and actually might really benefit from learning more about Men Walking and Talking. So, without further ado, here comes the episode.
Dan, welcome to the Mental Health Takeaways podcast. We're really excited to have you come on and speak about Men Walking and Talking. We're not going to go into that just yet because we've got a few other things that we want to find out a little bit more about you first. But then we're looking forward to exploring that with you. So thanks again for agreeing to come on the show. We know that our listeners will look forward to hearing all about what you've got to say.
Thanks very much. No, really appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you.
It's a total pleasure, Dan. So the questions that we start off with was one question, really. And we want to know that if you were having a takeaway, what would you choose as your takeaway? Because we feel like on the subject, you'll know an awful lot about this given the background of your work, but it can be really hard to get men talking, or at least that's what we're told sometimes. But Everybody loves talking about what takeaway that they would order. So in the spirit of that, let's say tonight, because it's a Tuesday night, or maybe a weekend, whenever you would have a takeaway, what is your go-to takeaway order?
I do like, at the moment, there's a Turkish takeaway near us. They do I suppose it's Greek Turkish sort of thing, like koftas in wraps and things, and that's kind of my thing at the moment. That's what I really enjoy. Yeah.
With sauces with that?
So some mint yogurt on it or something like that. It's okay. Nice. It's nice.
Does that come with chips, or is that so anti-Turkish that it's unreal?
No. Copious amount of chips. Huge amount of chips. Absolutely loads of chips.
I always get envious and reminded about how isolated I am down here in Cornwall, because we get guests on, because my options are like fish and chips, Chinese, Indian.
Cheese on toast.
Cheese on toast. And then, you come on and be like, Turkish. I'm like, Turkish? What? That's good.
I know. Yeah, we're branching out in Telford, going big time.
Brad, look, this isn't your episode, mate. I don't want to start talking about the social isolation down in Cornwall and how deprived you are because you don't get Turkish takeaways down there. Okay, so if you'd order that, and who would you normally have that with, Dan? Is that a family thing? Or
my wife and daughter. Yeah. So
they getting on the takeaway as well, or just sit?
Yeah. They would. I don't think my daughter would have lamb kofta, but it's usually generic chicken nuggets, to be fair. But my wife has similar. My wife will have similar like Turkish stuff. So yeah.
Do you know? I don't know why we ask these questions, because it always just makes me hungry, and I haven't had my dinner yet. And now I'm sitting here thinking about, I could go to lamb kofta, and I could get because you can get pita breads from the supermarket, but they're not the same. Yeah, I'm starving hungry now. Okay,
And
great.
that's the
Right.
problem. That's the problem, though, isn't it? It's never the same, is it? It's never the same when you
Never
cook
the
it yourself.
same.
You know?
You can try. Like that
Yeah.
whole Eddie Murphy sketch about we got McDonald's at home. It's not the same.
It's not, no,
It's
exactly
not
right.
McDonald's. Okay, right. Well, we're locking those takeaway choices. And then what we like to do is to, still in that vein of how men like to talk, get into some would you rather questions, because we find that's another quite easy way to sort of either start a conversation or to keep a conversation rolling. That was it, wasn't it? So I'm going to ask you the first would you rather question, and then after that we'll give you a chance to tell us a little bit more about what you do and what men walking and talking really is and the impact of that.
Okay.
But on the subject of men walking and talking, would you personally rather have feet which are impervious to blisters, so cannot get blisters? You could buy brand new walking or hiking boots tomorrow, do a 20 miler, and your feet are fine, or
Okay.
have the weather always suit whatever clothing you're wearing that day?
I think I go with the weather.
Ooh.
Yeah, yeah. I'd want that. If I was, we've done some challenges and things like that, and we've had like one of the challenges we did was 42 degrees. It was like a weekend in 2022, and we were doing 90 miles from Chester to Worcester in 3 days, and it was 42 degrees. That was the highest, and we were walking along canals. And so if I could pick, I'd probably pick weather. To be honest,
like I was thinking the feet impervious to blisters, because you can buy clothes which apparently are supposed to suit, a variety of different weathers. But when you mention that, like, I can see how doing the stuff you would do, you want the weather to suit the clothes. I just as a little side note, I do not believe in that trifecta of waterproof, windproof, and breathable. I swear you can have any two of those, but you can never have three. Like, I know that it's on the little triangular tags that are on the clothing of like waterproof and windproof, fine. Windproof and breathable, fine. I don't reckon you can have all three in one item of clothing.
I don't think so either. And the only way you're doing that is if you're spending like £500 on a jacket. That's the only way you're getting that, I reckon. I've never had that experience, so.
And the way they're getting the breathability is just cutting massive holes in it. Like, it's not anything special about the fabric. It's just literally like there's huge holes in it to let the sweat out.
Exactly,
Perhaps North Face or Berghaus would like to prove us all wrong, and our addresses will be available in the show notes.
No, let's go real top end, like Montaigne or Rab or someone like that.
Yeah. I will.
Do you go in for all that? Do you wear like super high tech stuff when you go on your like weekly walks? Are you kitted out in the latest high tech stuff, or do you just chuck a jumper on?
Yeah. Not for we only do on our weekly ones. We only do a couple of miles and things. I have better gear for when we go up in the mountains and things like that. But there's a limit on it, and there's always a limit on it. I'm not a millionaire. And it's just like sometimes it's like we get loads, like when we do our longer hikes and things like that. And obviously we have a kit list and things like that. But some people, it's just a barrier for some people, kit, isn't it? To actually getting outside in nature and things. So you don't want it to be a barrier.
That is a fascinating perspective, isn't it? Because that's one of the joys of walking, in that in theory you could just open your front door and go for it, and that it's one of the most accessible sports and pastimes out there, because you can literally just go from your front door. Yeah, I love that.
I think it leads nicely in, Dan, because there will be people that will see in the run up to this show and know you and know men walking and talking, but there'll be people who don't as well. So I'd just like to give you the opportunity really to talk a little bit about your journey and sort of how you got from where you started to where you are now, and what sort of inspired you to set up Men Walking and Talking.
Yeah, so in 2020 going into 2021, I was coming off the back of multiple breakdowns at work, constant anxiety, constant bouts of depression, in and out of it all the time, been signed off work for anxiety issues. And I'd done the generic man thing of I'll be fine, I deal with it on my own. That was my party line that I played on a loop in my head. And
We've all been there.
yeah, we have, absolutely.
100%.
Yeah. And my wife said to me, like, you really need to go and speak to someone or work on, how you're feeling and these issues that are, kind of plaguing me, to be honest. And these weren't issues that from a few years. These are built up from when I was a kid right up until I was like 35. And that suppression had kind of led me to that point, really. So after my wife said, you need to go and speak to someone, 6 months later, I decided to go and speak to someone. And
make it seem like it was your idea?
Oh, absolutely. I was like, what a really good idea. I'm going to give the therapist a ring. Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah, we'll take that bit out on. No, it definitely wasn't my idea. And so, yeah, eventually went and saw a therapist and sat down, and it was like a bit of like an epiphany moment for me that I was like, so I started speaking and she was like, oh, so why are you here? And then just for about, I don't think she spoke for the first hour.
Wow.
I just everything came out. And then I was thinking, what? So I don't actually have to feel like this for the rest of my life. And that was kind of that was in my brain going into it. That like, right, I'll go in, I'll have a chat, I'll be the same, nothing will change, and I'll be stuck in this moment for the rest of my life. And and so after speaking, I had like constant kind of once a week therapy with her for about 4 or 5 months, and then I started working on my self-esteem with a men's coach called Lee, who's one of my good friends now. And that was kind of one of my bigger issues, was around self-esteem, self-worth, talking to myself like something on the bottom of my shoe, and that was kind of my thing, one of my big issues, I think. And when we were having a conversation, me and Lee, and we were talking about, so what, you need some sort of purpose to focus on outside of family and work and all those things. And he said, well, what do you like doing? What do you like? And so I like walking, and then that was kind of off of the back of that. As I was like gaining confidence, I'd have more and more conversations with other guys about, all right, so I'm going to therapy at the moment for this, and with some of my mates and some other people that I just speak to now and again. And then they'd say to me, oh yeah, so 3 or 4 years ago I was on antidepressants, and we'd have a conversation about, and like I knew none of this information about anyone, but started asking these questions to people, and they were like, oh yeah, so I had this issue with anxiety, I was depressed, I was off work for 6 months. And you're like, so we're all going through this stuff as men, we're all going through these things, but no one's saying anything about it.
Yeah.
I mean, go on, sorry.
Just to come in on that point, I deliver mental health first aid courses, and that is well known where I work. I work in a school, and I deliver the courses generally outside of the school. But people at work know that that's what I do. And then also this podcast, we try to make it as public as possible. And I'll have conversation with, again, mates that I've known for 20, 25, 30 years in some cases. And they will also be like, oh yeah, I had a real issues with depression in my 20s, or I was really struggling with anxiety in my 30s. And these are men that I've known for ages. Yeah. But they're feeling like they'll tell me that now, but they're exactly mirrored of that whole, we were all dealing with it on our own and not actually telling each other or anyone. And the irony is that telling other people is actually helpful to those problems.
Yeah.
I'd
It really
want to come in there as well, because just to highlight again how common that is, because you've said that scenario. Matt's come in and said, "Yeah, same for me," and the same for me as well. In a period, in a similar time to you, Dan, actually, when I was struggling with a number of things, and then eventually started to talk to friends, and I was like, "Oh my God!" Like, so many of them have been on like antidepressants for whatever, and I didn't have a clue. And I just think it's worth that the three of us reiterate that point, because it's going on out there all the time. And yet, if we just are brave enough to engage in those conversations with some of our closest friends, we're not saying go out on a street and shout it through a speaker,
no.
but just to engage in those conversations, we can find commonality really, really easily, I think, and recognize. Because as soon as you recognize that actually other people are going through it and it's not just you, that's a game changer in itself. Before you've even done anything about it, that's a game changer. And I really like the point you made about recognizing when you start to see the therapist, that actually you didn't have to stay like that. And it's something that I love. So I still work in schools as Nibbo does, but I also work as a hypnotherapist. And when people come to see me for an initial consultation, they always leave feeling really, really good, because actually what we've done is gone through what is going on in your brain. So they come in with that thought of, I'm just stuck like that, and it's just me, and I'm broken, and there's something wrong, to leave in thinking, okay, that's just the way my brain is operating right now, but I can change that. And so I just think already, before we even got halfway through the podcast, you've nailed two really, really important points there. Is that actually just having that courage to open up to somebody, and also to identify that we don't need to stay there. We all get those feelings, and we can, get in those ruts, but actually we can climb back out of those. So I think they're great points to kick off. We might as well just end now and go and get some lamb koftas, I think.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Dad, if you could stop stealing my takeaways that I've just spent time and effort writing down for the last part of the show, and highlighting those at this point in the show, that'd be great. So if you could just be quiet, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, sorry, I got a bit excited there.
Sorry, Dan. You were saying about how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So we started having more like meaningful conversations with other guys and things like that, and they, like we just said, they reiterated that, so I've had these issues going on, and they weren't really, and they were just keeping it very much to themselves. And so off the back of that, I thought, well, what can I do in terms of if I'm being honest, it was what I needed at that point. So what did I need at that point? I needed a space where I could take my thoughts from the week or from the year or from 10 years or whatever, and bring whatever I wanted to bring and speak about them with other guys who had similar experiences or, other experiences. And they could, we could just, you have that kind of mutual open discussion. And that was kind of, I was thinking, I tried to think about how I could kind of create a group that had those sort of values. But at the same time, I knew I didn't want it to be inside. I knew I didn't want to be sitting around in a circle. I didn't want to be, and I'd always found it difficult when I was, not so much now, but when I was really struggling, I'd find it very difficult and that was probably the block to go into a therapist, to sit down in a room and have, eye-to-eye contact and tell them my deepest, darkest thoughts. So I had a conversation, me and Lee had a conversation, and he said, well, you like walking and maybe you could use that. So I created a group in the little village that I live in. and we had 7, 8 guys turn up each week. The first week, to be fair, go back to the first week, one guy turned up. And I always think about that guy. If he hadn't turned up, I'm not sure. I'm not sure where we'd be now. I really don't. Because I kind of put it out on Facebook and things like that. Oh, we're doing this, and and it got quite good interaction. But then you don't know. You never know. Yeah. So he came along, and we had a really good chat, and he spoke about how things are going on in his life and issues that he's had and things like that. And I honestly don't know where I'd be if he hadn't turned up on that evening.
And did he come to subsequent walks, or was he your
wonder? So for a time he ran one of our groups, which was really
amazing.
Cool. Yeah, it was really cool. So then from that I had this group running here, and then people started coming to me saying, "Oh, we really need one in this town. We really need one in this town." 2 months in, we had 5 or 6 across Shropshire. Social media is a wonderful thing in many ways, not so much in others, but it kind of it does its thing, and it kind of starts to balloon outwards, and all of a sudden you've got 10 groups in the first year, and and now I think we're at 38 or 39 across the country now.
Wow.
So amazing.
Yeah, which is crazy, to be honest. It's crazy. And I only ever, the thing being is I only really ever kind of vocalize that and say these sort of things and think about it when I'm doing things like this. I don't really, it's very much, I speak about this with the other guys that I work with and who help me do this and everything, because I don't do it on my own. Very much thinking about we're constantly in it. We're never thinking, oh right, we're at 38 now or we're at 40, whatever. We're just in it, I suppose, which is maybe, I don't know whether it's healthy or not. I'm not sure.
That I know exactly what you mean in terms of, is it healthy to be literally just in the moment and just focusing on what's going on, or are you sometimes too close to be able to see it from a distance and to look objectively? Because you get so much advice, don't you, about this is good or that's good or the other one. How many men attend the walks roughly? So how many men would walk with you guys over the course of a week in terms of the national picture?
So last week we had a record across our group. So that was the highest we ever had is 411 across all groups. That's across all our groups.
I feel like that warranted a drum roll before the announcement.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't build it up more.
I'm sure you can add that into the edit, Nibbo.
Do you know what? I'll get on the sound effects department.
Followed by a round of applause afterwards, I think.
Yeah, we could have people cheering and whistling right now.
Nice. Let's just do the whole thing. That'd be great.
That's amazing, though. How does that feel to sort of see those numbers?
No, it is really cool. It is really cool, and that, I think for us now, it's like the 411 is the. I suppose you just have to put it in perspective of how. When we have meetings with other directors and stuff like that, and we all sit down and things, it's the impact that has not just on the person who comes to the walk, but the family of that person as well.
Oh yeah.
It's like the wave out from that person, and those are the sort of messages we get, which are amazing. That oh, this has helped my dad so much. This has helped my uncle so much. Whatever. Son so much, I think the men generally, from my perspective and what I've learned over the last 4 years of doing this, need a community of other men around them.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what changes.
There's a principle, isn't there, called the third place, which is that men tend to have home and work. And we very rarely have a third place where we can be something different than we are at home and than we are at work. Some men have the gym. Some men have football clubs, rugby clubs, golf clubs. Other men have walking and talking or therapy sessions. But just generally that men And women as well. But I think, as a broad generalisation, women are more comfortable seeking out social opportunities, whereas men tend to focus in that work, home, work, home, work, home. And it's worth emphasising how much men need that third place.
Absolutely.
I think it comes back to that point that, again, you raised at the beginning, is that because I kind of thought, well, why is that? When you said about, kind of 6 months before you took the decision to see a therapist, because that's generally probably what men do, isn't it? We actually fight it, we bottle it up for as long as we can, and we don't tend to do something about it until it's almost our kind of last ditch effort to try and fix something. And I think communities like yours that you're developing do such a good job of that, because it is about that sense of belonging. Once you've got that sort of sense of belonging, you feel comfortable sharing, and there's something, I think, comfortable talking to people who aren't necessarily a therapist. They just have a lived experience kind of similar to yours, and it just makes everything much more relatable. And I think that's one of the big successes about things like that you've set up. And I just think, again, going back to that idea that how you felt back in 2020 going into 21 when you were really low, to think that you've now had an impact on over 400 different men who are probably at that point again, it's really rewarding, isn't it? That's got to feel great.
It really does, Brad. Yeah, it does. It does. And I think the reason I laugh is because I'm a one for. It's a strange thing. It's a strange thing because 4 or 5 years ago, I wouldn't have even had a conversation with you about it, about how I was feeling and how I was doing and all those things. I just wouldn't have.
Yeah.
No way. And then 5 years on, I talk to you guys about this sort of thing, and do it on a daily basis. And it's just it's a weird phenomenon. I feel like I suppose it's a bit cliche, but you feel like a different person to you were then, and I can feel strange though. It does feel strange.
I can totally relate to that idea of that transformation from being one person to being a different person. I've realised I've accidentally written down a terrible pun.
Look out, Dan.
We'll go with it anyway. I literally just wrote down the words "big step," step, walking. But when you went from the state you were in 2020, 2021, to going to therapy, that feels to me like a fairly big step. Whereas what I like about this podcast and what I like about your group and other groups like yours is that they feel like smaller steps that can enable somebody to take that bigger step later on. Like, wouldn't it have been great for you to be feeling the way you were, and for there to be several smaller steps building up to therapy? Because I imagine at the groups and at the walks, there's probably a variation of men there some that might have been to therapy, some that haven't, actually there might be men there that would benefit from going to therapy, that are then hearing about what other people's positive experiences have been, and that might encourage them to be able to take that step, which is now not such a big step.
No, definitely. And just to put a little plug on our tagline. So like on the back of our hoodies and things like that, and on our logo, it says take the first step. So that's kind of our tagline. So you've just nailed that. So that's fantastic. Thank you.
I'm available for marketing opportunities at a premium rate.
Yeah, that's the problem. No, that's spot on. That's absolutely spot on.
The other thing that I really love about your groups, which you told Brad and I offline, was that men can come, and it's a walking and talking group, but you said to us that men don't necessarily have to talk about their mental health. So in line with that, Brad's got a phenomenal would you rather, which I've been waiting to hear your answer to since Brad told me what he thought he'd ask. So Bradders.
Okay, set me up. I feel like we almost need another drum roll now. Okay, Dan, would you rather walk and not talk, or talk and not walk?
Walk and not talk. Yeah.
Okay.
Just because I think, I'm always going to big it up, but we have guys who come along who have walked with us for 4 or 5 weeks and not said a word. And then on that 6th week, all of a sudden they've said, "Oh, I've got this going on. I've got this going on." So there's something powerful about the just being shoulder to shoulder, even if you're not talking.
Yeah.
I've got Coldplay's "Fix You" playing in my head, like that. That's a beautiful moment of that idea, because I can totally picture it. Because knowing men as other men do, and knowing that reluctance to actually sort of feel like you're just going to break the dam and let something out, I can see how somebody would go each week and think, I think I'll say something this week, and then getting there and thinking, well, fuck no, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it, and then trying again the next week. And whilst it might look from the outside like that man is just turning up and going for a walk, probably each week he's turned up thinking, I want to be brave enough to say something this week, or I'm not. And then next week, I want to be brave enough, and I'm not. And then finally getting to that stage where actually, do you know what? I feel like I trust these men and this space enough to be able to say, actually, I've been experiencing this and I've found it really hard. So yeah, Coldplay ringing out.
Definitely. and that's the thing, is that you sit in that, like, that, you're walking with guys, you're building that trust, you're building that, like, community around you, and then you see other guys, like, kind of role modeling that behavior as well, like that, like men who have been coming to the group for 2 years or whatever, and they'll be like straight in, oh god, I've had a shit week or whatever, and then they're like, this and this, because they know they just got to get it out. And that's how they do it every single week. They bring what they want to bring, and then no one judges them. Everyone's just like, all right, yeah, that's not great. And then they'll have a little bit of a back and forward about it, and they start to feel a little bit better, get those things off their chest. And then when they see that no one's going to call them a whatever, fill in the blank derogatory man name, that man up, whatever, no one's going to say anything to them about, like, in that way, then they're like, okay, maybe this is the place where I can actually start moving forward, I suppose.
You've got to be exposed to it, I think, haven't you? Because it goes back to where we almost started the conversation, that men typically bottle it up. And so for generations, men have lived through never hearing these conversations, certainly never having those conversations. And it's only when you get to see it, and you get to see other men sharing and feel comfortable in that situation, that you think, okay, I could do it. And I've certainly grown since we've been doing this podcast, because, every week we talk about it. Sometimes it's listening to the guests, and invariably Nibbo and I kind of share and share some of our vulnerabilities as well, I suppose. And you get so comfortable with it that it just becomes easy. And that was kind of a big driver for us in the podcast, was that actually, if people aren't quite ready to have the conversations, perhaps just listening to other people have the conversations might be that first step. And then that might get them to come to a walking and talking group, for example. I just think it's so valuable that men can turn up to your groups and have no pressure to say anything. They can actually just come along and get some of the benefits of just being out in nature and walking, because we know that alone can have a significant benefit on your mental health. So it just seems like it's win-win for everybody, really. Should be mandatory, shouldn't it?
Oh, I agree. It should be. And I think guys just, I'm speaking again generically now, but like generally, but a lot of guys I speak to want they said, this is the kind of thing I've been looking for, because there's no pressure, there's no one's asking me invasive questions, no one's grilling me on why I'm here. That's all laid at their door to bring what they want to bring,
Yeah.
Which I think is so important, because I'm firmly of the opinion that there is no silver bullet for male mental health. and that actually it really is a kind of a case of whatever conditions and scenario a particular man needs in order to address his thoughts, feelings, and emotions, then that's what he needs. And there are some men out there who, and I'm not criticising him, but Vinnie Jones on the Sky football adverts, who's like, "Fellas, we got to talk. You got to do this and you got to do that." That might work for some men. I know it would turn me off. I know that like we're like that sort of hyper masculine approach to things. But for some men, that's the thing that triggers them into thinking, right, I identify with Vinnie Jones and I can listen to that and I can do that. And then on the other hand, there's men walking and talking where it's just just turn up. We'll just go for a walk. And you'll get the benefits of going for a walk, like the whole improved mood, improved sleep, the stress relief and the improved physical health, all those kinds of things that will go along with just going for a walk. And then if you want to talk, fine, talk. And if you don't this week, you don't have to this week. And I just think what is needed is loads of different variation in what we can offer men so that a man can go, actually, I think I need that, and then go and do that and improve their mental health that way.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think it's what we try not to do as an organisation is kind of shove it down men's throats, if that for want of a better phrase. When I was at that, in that like sort of headspace, people telling me you need to talk, you need to do this, you need to do that. I think a lot of men find that quite triggering. You need to. Well, I'm not doing that then, am I?
Yeah, I don't need anything added to my to-do list. Thank you. I'm busy.
My to-do list is off the charts, so I'm fine, thanks. But yeah, and that was always, and also it's kind of for me it was a kind of a stubborn thing. Like, fuck off! I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Then. I'm not doing that. Like because you feel as though you're losing that last tiny bit of control that you have. I think that's what it was for me.
From the takeaway that I wrote down that you spoiled, Brad, so this is payback. And it was about when you said earlier about going to the therapist and thinking to yourself, I don't actually have to feel like this for the rest of my life, and that actually that is a moment of control, isn't it? That's that moment of where you realise, oh, I can have agency over how I'm going to live the rest of my life. I don't just have to put up and shut up with these negative feelings. I can actually have some agency. I can have some control. And so it's not sacrificing control. It's kind of gaining control. Yeah, I think that was my point on that, Brad. What was it that you wanted to say that was so important?
I'll let you have it. I'll let you have it because I can piggyback a little bit. Because again, it's it kind of links in with the way that our brains are wired. Really, as a hypnotherapist, I would never be saying to somebody, "Right, I've listened to what you've got to say, and I think this week you should do this." Because what immediately happens is what I would refer to as the primitive mind goes, well, you can get fucked because I don't trust you. This is what we've done for years. We've not spoken to people. We've suffered with anxiety, and it hasn't been very nice, but we've survived every day since. And so it's the way our brains are wired. But when you can just turn up and walk and get the various benefits that we've talked about and listen to other people, then you make the conscious decision yourself to say, next week, I think I might just mention something, even if it's only a small thing. But you're so much more likely to follow through on that idea because you've come up with it yourself. It's not because somebody said, right, you've come for 3 weeks now, you really need to talk, because that just shuts everybody down, and it's to do with the way our brains are wired. So again, it's just another nice thing about the group, I think.
No, I totally agree.
Nibbo, I'm thinking maybe we drift into our next Would You Rather.
Yeah, that's what I'm waiting for. That's you as well, isn't it, Brad?
It is me as well. So this is again a little bit of a light-hearted one, Dan, but we'll see where it takes us, because we have had some episodes where we've asked the most ridiculous would you rathers and then gone really quite deep and meaningful. So who knows where we'll go with it. But here it is. Dan, would you rather always walk with wellies that are full of water or always get lost on every single walk you do?
Oh, I'm thinking about wellies and blisters and yeah. I'm going to go with the getting lost one.
Yeah.
Just because I think some of the best walks I've been on have probably involved getting lost. So,
yeah.
And then, like you said, we could go down a rabbit hole of I was lost and I was found, that sort of thing. so
you can sing some hymns if you'd like.
Yeah, it sounds like that, doesn't it? Yeah, get some praise books out or whatever. Yeah, it does sound a bit like that. But yeah, so no, I think I'd go with the getting lost one. When I was younger and I used to go walking with my dad and things like that, he didn't enjoy map reading, so we just walked. Obviously, we just ended up wherever. We were like, I think it was about 8 or 9, and we do like 14, 15 mile walks every weekend, and yeah, loved it. To be fair, I did love it. So yeah,
I feel like I'm in one of those movies where I've had like a body swap with somebody else, because I keep doing what Brad always does, and what Brad always does is makes a point that isn't a question and doesn't lead us anywhere, but it just sort of says a thing and then is quiet again afterwards. And I'm going to do exactly that now. I got adult onset asthma, and I used to mountain bike quite a lot, and then I couldn't do it in the same way because my lungs just weren't up to it. And then I saved up and put some money aside, and I got an electric mountain bike, and I hadn't realised that the thing that I had lost with the asthma was not being able to go on bike rides. It was able to go on bike rides and see a trail going down a hill that I didn't know, and thinking, I wonder where that goes. And actually being able to just go down there and know that once I was at the bottom, I'd be able to get back up to the top. Because if it was with my asthma, I'd go down there. Well, I wouldn't even go down there because I'd know, I mean, if it goes nowhere, I've got to lug this bike back up the top of the trail and I'm screwed. Whereas what I really enjoyed getting back was that feeling of, no, I can just go and get lost. And wherever I end up, I'll be able to get back up the hill somehow. And it was like being a 15-year-old again, of just having that the energy to do that. So that isn't a question. It doesn't go anywhere, but I just thought I'd mention it.
No, I get you. And I think it's that whole, like, when we're out doing things that we love doing, and, you know, whether it's walking, mountain bike riding, whatever it is, you want to have that, like, that playfulness sort of side to it, that you can just be like, right, okay, this is, I'm not thinking too much today. I'm just going to go with it. Like, you know, sort of flow state, isn't it? I suppose.
I guess,
lovely.
In some respects, if you get lost, it does take away your anxiety and your worries, because then you just kind of like, shit, how do I get back to where I was supposed to be? You can't worry about the other stuff. I think there is something nice about that, and probably loads of cliches about, you know, you have to lose yourself before you can find yourself and all of that sort of stuff. But you know, I do like the idea of just going off and exploring. And for me, I couldn't cope with the wet socks. It'd be the wet socks that's the deal breaker for me. Hate that.
Yeah, I would. No, me either. That is one thing I spend a lot of money on, socks. So yeah.
Do you wear those waterproof socks? Have you seen those?
Yeah.
Do you find they work or?
Well, I got some of them. I got some of them for like the bigger hikes we do and stuff, and I've never had a blister. I've never had a blister when I wore those. So yeah, and you know, like people are like, well, like £25 for a pair of socks, and I'm like, yeah, but I didn't even think about blisters.
But and if you had got a massive blister halfway through a walk, you would pay £25 to not have that blister, I'm sure, to be.
Oh, I would.
And therefore the socks are worth it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, going back to your point at the beginning, Nibbo, I'm now questioning how waterproof walking boots are if you need waterproof socks to go underneath them.
Da-da-da. but they'll be breathable and windproof. When do
Yeah.
you do your massive walks? Do you do like particular events that you
Yeah.
save a big walk for?
So we try and do. So we'll try and do 4 or 5 bigger events during the year. Like we did the Malverns in January. Last September we did like a big sponsored walk. We did like the Shropshire Hills. That was about 26 miles. We've done like the Yorkshire Three Peaks, and then the one I spoke about earlier on, which was the we did. Yeah, so we did not. That's probably the biggest one we've ever done, which is like 90 miles. It was supposed to be 90 miles. It wasn't. From Chester to Worcester in 3 days along the canals. And if you ever walked along canals, they're soul destroying, absolutely soul destroying.
Yeah.
They're just straight for miles, and you just
very little scenery. I find.
Yeah,
yeah. No, I grew up in Bath, and there's the Kennet and Avon Canal comes into Bath, and you would think that would be a nice walk, and it is for 500 yards, where there's like ducklings and a few boats to look at. But then when it's all just the same all the way along, it gets dull. And usually there's a railway line on one side of you, and I'm not a big fan. But
no. And the thing, it was me and one other guy did the whole thing, and like other guys kind of jumped on and off more off than on, and based on the weather and how horrendous it was. But we were like the only shade we had for those 4 days or 3 days was just the little canal bridges. So you were just longing for a canal bridge. And we started at I think we started at 174, and we got down to 0 by the time we got to Worcester. And that was like how many bridges it was painful. Some sort of that sounded like, honestly, some sort of punishment it was. But it raised a lot of money, so it was fine.
Well, there you go. It's worth it then.
Can I just ask on some of those big walks, because there's lots of different places you've been. Is there one particular moment that stands out for you, either from the point of view of like actually it was just magnificent scenery, or at the point of view from a human connection or something that happened?
I think the one we did 2023. So we did the Yorkshire Three Peaks in 2023, and again that was boiling hot, but we had a lot of guys come from different groups all over the country, and a few of my friends came and things like that. And I don't know whether you guys done Yorkshire Three Peaks. It's about, I think it's about 24 miles, but it's just the sheer incline of it. And we were on the second peak, I think, and there was a guy who was walking up, and he was wearing a shirt and tie, and some of the guys went over and talked to him, and I think he was 84 years old, wearing a shirt and tie and walking boots, and he does it every single weekend. He's done it for every single weekend for the last 50 years, 60 years. Wow. He's done that, whatever the weather, he goes up. And you're thinking, when you're lugging yourself up the second peak and you're 37 and you're like, what is going on here? Question my life choices. Like, well, why can he help him? He can do that, but that's but it was just amazing to see. And also that walk was, I don't know, I think it was kind of that was kind of the door that opened. I thought, right, this is something that's really not going anywhere now. This is something that's where I'm too far in to go back now.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I can imagine how that's a reaffirming moment to be like, this is significant and this is valid what we're doing here.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And you get little moments like that now and again. You got to hold on to them tight. You know what I mean? You really do, because I explain this to loads of people I speak to and things like none of us get paid for what we do. We do it because, and we say it to each other all the time, because it's the right thing to do.
Yes,
that's why we do it. There's no other reason really. So, and because it's grown to something where it's just helping a lot of guys. So if we're, in some way making people feel a little bit better and that they can get up in the morning with a bit more of a spring in their step and, go and face the world a bit better. So yeah, that's why we do it, I suppose.
That's so powerful.
Amazing.
I love that.
Yeah.
I also imagine that chap's shirt and tie were probably waterproof, windproof, and breathable.
Oh, they were. Absolutely.
And that's why he was able to keep doing it every weekend. Okay, so Dan, what we do as our last sort of round of questions is we get you to meet the alternate versions of yourself, one younger, one older, but you only get a minute in each conversation. So walking into the room is little Dan, who is 8 years old, and you get a minute to give him any advice or tell him anything that you'd want to tell him that you think might benefit 8-year-old Dan. In a minute. Off you go.
Okay. I think I'd tell him that you're more than capable of changing things and doing things, big things, than you actually know, and you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait till you get to rock bottom, hiding who you actually really are for so long, to realise that. And I think that's what I tell him. I think that all the confidence and self-esteem and everything inside is already inside of you. You just need to actually have a little bit more belief in yourself. So yeah,
I heard a lovely thing recently, which was that basically that our kids believe us. Like if we tell our kids, when one of your teeth comes out, if you put it under your pillow, a fairy will come along and swap it for a pound coin, and they believe it. And we tell our kids that a fat man comes down the chimney, brings presents every year, and they believe it. So if we tell our kids, you are braver than you know, they will believe it. But if we tell our kids, you're stupid, you're lazy, you're not popular, you're not fun to be around, they will believe that as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it really highlights the importance of what we tell our kids.
Definitely. And and that's something I like do with my daughter and things like that. I'm constantly like I probably tell her I love her about 25 times a day. She's probably think I'm right weirdo, but do you know what I mean? But you don't care though, do you? You just don't care because I'm just gonna just like tell her how amazing she is and all the amazing things that she does, and like, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you do that?
Of course, there will be a day where. So I've got two kids, a daughter and a son. My son's still young enough for me to kind of be putting him to bed, as it were. My daughter's far too old and too cool and too independent for any of that now. But my little boy, I put him to bed, and every night I say like, Daddy loves you, and he literally meets it with, I know. but there will be a night when he's at university or he's moved out of home, wherever he's gone. There'll be a first night there where he'll be thinking like, oh, Dad loves me. Like, because I've told him that many times, which I think is really important.
Yeah, really is.
Right. He's gone. 80-year-old you has come walking into the room. Shirt, tie, no blisters. You get a minute to ask him anything that you'd want to know from him that he could pass, any knowledge he could pass down to you in your current situation.
Okay. I think I'd ask him, first of all, if what we did for the last 50 years or whatever made him happy, and if he feels as though, I don't know, he feels, it's a difficult one, that, isn't it? If he feels as though that kind of his life has been kind of fulfilled, I suppose, really, because that was always a big thing for me. For years and years and years, thinking about, am I enough? Am I enough? Am I enough? And that's always been a issue for me, and still is sometimes, I think. So if he was, I'd probably ask him if he actually feels like he's fulfilled now, and he's done what he set out to do, I suppose.
one of the most powerful things I think you said there, which is such a positive example, is that like utterance of you saying, I do still wonder sometimes if I am enough. For our listeners to hear this amazing man that we've got on that set up this amazing initiative does still question himself and does still ask, am I enough? And it's weird to say that that's a positive thing, but if someone like you asks yourself that question, I think it gives other people license to not feel guilt and shame around them also asking themselves, am I enough? Because if you're asking yourself, am I enough? It's okay that they ask themselves that. And because there's asking yourself that question and there's getting the answer to it. But then for some people, there's also then the guilt and shame around having asked yourself that. Like I do that. I overthink to the point of like, oh, am I enough? No, why am I asking myself I'm enough? Like, just layer on top of layer on top of layer. So I think it's really reassuring to hear you say that you actually ask yourself that as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. Thank you.
Well, the whole thing is a massive pleasure.
Frantically scanning back over my notes. I think again, there's been so much. And much like I stole your thunder earlier, Nibbo, I feel like I probably just stole my own, getting so excited. I think probably
I've
my
got
biggest.
3. If you want me to.
I'm good. You're only supposed to have one, by the way. I'm normally the one with multiple. I think the biggest thing that stands out is that idea that change is possible. And when you talked about being so surprised that change was possible, that you didn't have to stay in a world where actually you were filled with anxiety and all of the sort of negative connotations that are attached to that. Because there will be people listening to this that feel like, well, that's it now. These are this is my hand and I've just got to try and get through it as best I can, when in reality that's not true at all. And when you're in those scenarios, it's really difficult to believe that you can get out. And that's why I think, men turning up to groups like yours or just listening to the podcast can't hear that enough. That you don't have to stay in the situation you are now. It is temporary. It might be quite a long temporary for certain scenarios, but it doesn't have to last forever if we are able to take some steps towards solving some of the problems that we've got. And whatever that first step is, like you said, that's the difficult one to take. But finding an avenue that is right for you, whether it's, men walking and talking, whether it's, a talking group, whether it's listening to a podcast, whether it's, going and seeing a therapist, just know that there are things that you can do and that change is possible. That would be my takeaway from tonight's show.
Strong, Bradley. I like that very much. Yeah, that does cover one of my 3 takeaways, because it was such a powerful thing that you said early on, Dan, about that whole, I don't actually have to feel like this for the rest of my life and absolutely change is possible. I am going to bend the rules a bit and have 2, and I can't even think of a way of making it 1, because Brad will often have like 7 and claim that that's just one takeaway. But my 2 takeaways are, so I wrote down when we were having that conversation about discovering that other men had been through similar trials and tribulations that we ourselves had gone through, and it was only when we were making it public that they were saying, oh yes, well, actually I've experienced this too. What I wrote down first of all was, like, for the man going through those things to make it public and to share that they are experiencing those things so that other men can come forward. But I think that's incredibly difficult to do. Like Brad and I notice, I don't know if you get it with your social media stuff, that actually there is often a reluctance to share stuff about male mental health, just in case someone's like, oh look, he's struggling with his mental health because he's shared something from a group or he's shared something from a podcast, whereas that's not the case at all. But what I revised that thought to being is, instead of when you're going through it, making it public that you're going through it, instead, as men and as listeners to this podcast, try to be the safe place where someone can come and say those things to you, and be the place where you'll just hold space for someone, let them talk. I mean, the obvious safe place in this example is men walking and talking. But if that isn't accessible to someone, just as one person, one man listening to this podcast could think, well, that's what I'll do and that's what I'll be. And by doing things like sharing links, sharing Men Walking and Talking's posts on their stories, or stuff from the podcast, to just say, it just kind of puts out there, if you want to have a conversation, I'm here and I'm ready and I'm willing, and you can come and have that conversation. So that was my first takeaway. And my second takeaway, what's the film where everything goes into itself? Christopher Nolan.
Inception.
Yeah. Very good. Where this isn't charades, is it?
It's a weird film. That's a crazy film.
But this goes quite meta. I loved what you were talking about, how you set up Men Walking and Talking because it was what you needed. And what I think that speaks to is men giving themselves what they think they need. I've done some reading recently about inner child work, and about how sometimes there's a need for men to father themselves and to give themselves what their father didn't give them, and to actively or proactively go out and do that. And I even wonder, Brad touched on it, I even wonder if this podcast is what Brad and I need. I wonder if this is our version of walking and talking, if this is our way of like, oh, we do talk about our mental health and other people's mental health and the broader male mental health spectrum. And I wonder, Brad, if that is because that's what we need and we're giving ourselves that. So I would say to our listeners, try to work out, what is it that you need. You don't have to set up a 400-man strong walking and talking group, but just try to work out, what is it that I need? Is that available and accessible? And if it isn't, maybe I can make it for myself. Yeah. So those are my two takeaways. And I wondered, Dan, if you had anything that sort of stuck out for you as a particular takeaway from the conversation.
No, I think for me broadly, I think these conversations are happening more now, I think, but they need to continue at the same rate, and we need to continue at the same rate in terms of promoting healthy coping mechanisms for men, because it will come to a point where, you know, we're reaching a certain amount of men, and we're reaching a certain demographic of men, but statistics kind of don't lie, really. And there's always that kind of caveat to it, that even though there is more awareness and things like that in terms of what we're doing, and, you know, other amazing organizations and things like that, we need to keep working at it, because like you said earlier on, Matt, there isn't that, like, we haven't found that silver bullet yet, and I don't know whether we will, but we've got to keep pushing in that direction.
Agreed. Strongly agreed. And ultimately, I think it all still comes back to that idea of, well, why are we doing the stuff that we're doing? And what you said about it being, it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do to push in that direction, and it's the right thing to do to try to help other people and to try to help ourselves along the way. And probably 80-year-old you, and 80-year-old me, and 80-year-old Brad would be very proud of that idea of, younger me did what was the right thing. And I think ultimately, when all is said and done, that's what really counts.
Yeah, I think that's all there is, isn't there, really? That's all there is.
That. What a lovely point to round off on. And we nearly finished on time. Nearly.
Nearly. Not too bad. I blame your random, pointless point that you made partway through, Nibbo.
Wow.
That's harsh.
So
unnecessarily harsh, I think.
Well, Dan, look, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on and to find out about your journey and kind of what led you to set up Men Walking and Talking. It's a fantastic thing, and I'm sure your numbers are going to grow and grow. We certainly hope that they do. And like we've talked about, it is one piece of a very big puzzle. But I think you can definitely be very proud of what you've set up and achieved. And we're really grateful for you coming on and talking to us this evening. So thanks very much for giving us some of your time.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dan.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, there it is, folks. You've heard from Dan. What a great episode that was, Nibbo.
Yeah, I loved it. And I feel like all of the episodes stay with me for a little bit afterwards. But I feel like there was something about the quiet, composed nature of Dan that really resonated with me, that really made me feel like, we talked about how certain things suit certain men. Well, I feel like if there was a men walking and talking group near where I'm based, and I've looked at them and there doesn't seem to be one locally to me, and I do not have the time to set up my own one. But I feel like that quiet resonance actually really appeals to me. So that was something that I think will stick with me for a little while.
Yeah, definitely. I love the whole approach of men walking and talking, in that you can just turn up and walk. There's no pressure to say anything. But what they are finding is that over time, men are able to talk, as we often find on the podcast also. So yeah, I like that idea of no pressure. It's there if you want to, and men are talking, and then when they are, there's no judgment as well. So yeah, if it's something that you're interested, look into men walking and talking, find out where they are geographically. And if there's not something like that near you, perhaps you could find out if there's something similar, or if maybe you might be the person to set up the group near you. Matt Nib, you've got your hand up.
I do have my hand up. It's not that I need the toilet. It is that this episode is hopefully going out towards the end of April. But May is National Walking Month, and stay tuned to the podcast, because we have another person who runs mental health walks who we're going to be talking to, and that episode will be hopefully coming out in May at some point. So May, National Walking Month. And I had something else to say. That was it. We talked in the show about people's reluctance to share mental health content on their social media because of the stigma around sharing stuff like that. Do your community a favour by showing them you are somebody who will engage in a mental health conversation by engaging in mental health content, by sharing something from Men Walking and Talking, or sharing one of the mental health takeaways reels or posts, just to show the people around you that follow you or are friends with you on Facebook, social, or Instagram, that actually you are someone that would have a conversation about this kind of thing if they needed to have that conversation. That could be the biggest thing that you could do related to this episode, I think.
Great point, Nibbo. Well, we'll see you all next time on the Mental Health Takeaways podcast.
Yeah, whoa, amazing.
Bum, 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 ba-da-da-da. Go. What? Bum, 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 ba-da-da-da.